Let me tell you about two apartments, my friend. Same city, same neighborhood, similar rent. The first apartment belongs to someone earning $2 million a year. You walk in and there's a massive television on the wall, a $4,000 leather couch, kitchen appliances still in their boxes, clothes with tags still on them, a room packed with stuff that hasn't been touched in years. This guy's stomach turns when he checks his bank account, 2 missed paychecks, and he's done. The second apartment belongs to someone earning $1.1 million a year. You walk in and what do you see, son? Space. A simple couch, a reasonable television, kitchen tools that actually get used, clothes that actually get worn. This guy smiles when he checks his account because he has 18 months of expenses saved and 20% of every paycheck goes straight to investment. These two men live in the same neighborhood. The man earning almost half the other guy's salary is 10 times more financially secure. This is not an income story, my friend. This is the story of the hidden relationship between stuff and money that most people never grasp. The first guy isn't a gambler. He has no addictions. He simply built himself a life that forces him to spend every penny he earns. The second guy discovered something. Owning less doesn't mean living worse. It means living deliberately. And deliberate living creates the kind of financial breathing room that most high earners never experience. Now I'm going to tell you the minimalist money rules that separate people who always have money from those who never do, regardless of income. These rules aren't about going without. They're about understanding that everything you own has hidden costs you've never calculated. Let me start with a concept that will change the way you think, my friend. Everything you own costs you money twice. The first cost is obvious, it's the price tag. The second cost is usually larger and the part people completely ignore: storage, maintenance, mental energy, opportunity cost. That treadmill you bought takes up space in your home. Space costs money, between 1,500 and 2,500 lira per square meter annually in cities. The treadmill takes up roughly 2 square meters with clearance. You're paying thousands of lira in implicit rent every year for a piece of sports equipment that's turned into a clothes rack. The second cost is maintenance and repair. That boat sitting in your yard needs winterization, cleaning, registration, insurance, repairs. According to industry rules of thumb, annual maintenance costs run about 10% of the boat's value. A 600,000 lira boat demands 60,000 lira a year from you even if you never put it in the water. Not done yet, son. The second cost takes your mental energy too. Every item you own steals a small slice of your attention. It needs to be cleaned, organized, insured, kept in mind, and eventually disposed of. Research shows that visual clutter raises cortisol levels and reduces the brain's ability to focus. Your stuff is stressing you out without you even realizing it. Still not done. The second cost is opportunity cost. Every lira locked up in possessions is a lira that can't be invested. A 300,000 lira home gym setup could have been an index fund that grows past 1 million lira in 15 years. You didn't just buy a home gym, my friend. You bought a home gym instead of your future financial freedom. When you add up these hidden costs, many possessions end up costing more to own than they cost to buy. The purchase price is just the entry fee. The real expense keeps running for as long as you hold on to the item. Minimalists understand this intuitively, not because they hate nice things, but because they've calculated the true cost and decided most things simply aren't worth it. This brings us to the first rule, my friend. Rule 1. Calculate the cost per use before every purchase. Before buying anything, realistically estimate how many times you'll actually use it. Divide the total cost by that number. That gives you the cost per use, the only honest measure of value. A 4,000 lira jacket worn twice costs 2,000 lira per wear. An 8,000 lira jacket worn 200 times costs 40 lira per wear. The expensive jacket is actually cheaper in every meaningful sense. This calculation instantly kills the vast majority of impulse purchases. A 6,000 lira kitchen gadget you use twice a year costs 3,000 lira per use in the first year. That's a ridiculously expensive way to accomplish whatever task it performs. Meanwhile, a 600 lira tool you use weekly costs less than 12 lira per use in the first year. Cost per use also reveals which purchases are genuinely worthwhile. A 40,000 lira mattress used every night for 10 years costs roughly 11 lira per use. That's extraordinary value for something that affects your health and energy every single day. A 30,000 lira espresso machine used daily for 5 years costs less than 16 lira per use and likely saves money compared to coffee shop visits. The math cuts through marketing, emotion, and social pressure, my friend. It reveals what actually makes financial sense versus what just seems appealing in the moment. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you own. Walk through your home and look at each item you possess. Ask yourself one simple question. If this item disappeared today, would I spend money to replace it? Be honest. Would you really go out and buy another fondue set? Would you replace that bread maker collecting dust in the cabinet? Would you repurchase those clothes you haven't worn in 18 months? For most items, the honest answer is no. You didn't make a conscious decision to keep them in your life. They just stayed where they were. Impulse purchases, gifts you felt obligated to keep, leftovers from hobbies and phases you've moved past. These items have negative value, son. They take from you and give nothing back. Space, mental energy, maintenance. Every hour spent organizing, cleaning around, or thinking about items you wouldn't replace is an hour stolen from things that actually matter. Minimalists ruthlessly eliminate items that fail the replacement test. They sell what has value, donate what someone else could use, discard what serves nobody. The process feels uncomfortable at first and then liberating once it's done. The psychological weight of owning things you don't want or need is significant. Removing that weight creates a mental space that's hard to describe but immediately noticeable. Rooms feel larger. Decisions feel simpler. Cleaning takes half the time. You know where everything is because everything that remains has a purpose. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. There's a pattern I see constantly among people who earn good money but have nothing to show for it, my friend. They replace perfectly functional items simply because they're bored with them or because newer models exist. Their television works perfectly, but the new model has slightly better contrast. Their phone operates flawlessly, but the new release has a marginally improved camera. Their car runs reliably, but the New Year's model has updated styling. Their furniture serves its purpose, but they've grown tired of looking at it. These upgrades feel like improvements. They're actually wealth destruction disguised as progress. Minimalists adopt a strict policy, my friend. Never replace something that works properly. A phone that makes calls, sends messages, and runs apps doesn't need replacing just because a newer phone exists. A car that reliably gets you where you need to go doesn't need replacing just because your neighbor bought something shinier. This policy saves enormous sums over a lifetime. The average person replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, most of the time while the old phone works perfectly fine. Over 30 years, that pattern cost between 600,000 and 1 million lira in unnecessary purchases. Applied across all categories where upgrade culture operates, the lifetime waste easily exceeds 4 million lira. Minimalists escape this trap by defining functionality clearly. An item remains functional until it genuinely can no longer serve its purpose. Boredom is not failure. The desire for novelty is not failure. The existence of newer alternatives is not failure. Actual mechanical breakdown or genuine inability to perform required tasks is failure. Everything else is marketing telling you to solve problems you don't have. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance, my friend. If spending is easy and saving is hard, you spend. If saving is easy and spending is hard, you save. Minimalists engineer their environment so that the right choice is the easy choice. Spending friction looks like this. Remove stored credit card numbers from online retailers. Require a 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase. Delete shopping apps from your phone. Unsubscribe from promotional emails. Don't walk into stores unless you have a specific intended purchase. Saving ease looks like this. Automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday. Keeping only small amounts in your easily accessible checking account, making investment contributions happen before you ever see the money, treating savings as a fixed expense rather than an afterthought. These structural changes matter far more than willpower, son. Willpower depletes throughout the day. Environment is constant. Someone relying on willpower to avoid impulse purchases will eventually fail when they're tired, stressed, or emotional. Someone who deleted the shopping apps and removed their credit cards simply cannot impulse purchase in that moment. Full stop. Minimalists don't trust themselves to consistently make good decisions, my friend. They design systems that make good decisions automatic. The 24-hour waiting rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases. Most desires for objects fade within a day if you don't act on them immediately. Rule 5. Count your possessions regularly. This sounds obsessive until you actually do it, my friend. Counting creates awareness. Awareness prevents accumulation. Pick a category. Count how many items you own in that category. Write it down. The numbers shock most people who've never objectively examined their consumption habits. How many shirts do you have? Most people guess low and discover they have 3 or 4 times what they estimated. How many kitchen gadgets? How many pairs of shoes? How many items are in your junk drawer? How many books you'll never read again? The act of counting itself changes behavior, son. Once you know you have 47 shirts, buying another one feels different. You're not adding a shirt, you're bringing your collection to 48. The absurdity becomes visible. Minimalists track key categories over time. They set maximum thresholds, maybe 30 items of clothing total, maybe 15 books at any given time, maybe a one-in, one-out policy where any new purchase requires removing something existing. These constraints prevent lifestyle creep. Without intentional limits, possessions expand to fill available space. With limits, each addition requires a conscious decision about what it's replacing. That friction alone dramatically reduces acquisition. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. Most items people purchase get used intensively for a short period and then rarely afterward, my friend. The excitement of newness fades. The initial enthusiasm drops off. The item joins the collection of things owned but seldom touched. Minimalists test this pattern by renting or borrowing before committing to ownership. Want to try camping? Rent equipment for the first few trips. Want to try woodworking? Borrow tools from a friend or use a makerspace. Want a kayak? Rent several times before purchasing. This approach accomplishes two things. First, it reveals whether the enthusiasm is genuine or temporary. Many interests fade after the initial exploration. Better to discover this while renting than after buying equipment that collects dust indefinitely. Second, it clarifies exactly what you need. First-time campers often buy too much or buy the wrong things. Renting lets you learn before committing. When you eventually purchase, you buy precisely what's necessary rather than guessing. The buy-first mentality cost people enormously over their lifetimes, son. Closets and garages are full of dusty remnants of abandoned hobbies. Ski equipment from the phase when they thought they'd ski regularly. Photography gear from when they imagined becoming serious photographers. Music equipment from bands that played 2 shows. Minimalists avoid becoming museums of past enthusiasm. They test interests before investing. They maintain the flexibility to explore without the burden of ownership. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Every possession you own connects to other possessions, my friend. A boat requires a trailer, a hitch-equipped vehicle, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, and appropriate clothing. A purchase that seems singular actually triggers a cascade of supporting purchases. That's the lifestyle multiplier. Major purchases multiply into ecosystems of related expenses. The true cost is never just the item itself. Look at how this plays out with common purchases. A home gym requires flooring, mirrors, storage solutions, ventilation considerations, and often renovations to make the space suitable. A pool requires chemical supplies, cleaning equipment, covers, furniture, maintenance tools, and often landscaping to complete the installation. A motorcycle requires gear, storage, maintenance equipment, and often a truck or trailer for transportation to riding locations. Minimalists calculate the full ecosystem cost before any major purchase, son. They know that a 100,000 lira purchase can actually represent 160,000 or 240,000 lira when all the multiplier expenses are included. This full accounting often transforms what seemed like a reasonable purchase into something clearly excessive. The multiplier effect also works in reverse. Eliminating one major possession often eliminates an entire category of related expenses. Selling the boat means no more storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, or towing costs. The savings extend far beyond the item's own value. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning. Here's something that constantly traps high earners, my friend. They never define what enough looks like. So they keep purchasing more without ever arriving at satisfaction. Their income increases, so they upgrade their lifestyle. The new lifestyle becomes normal, so they need another income increase just to feel progress. This cycle continues indefinitely. People earning $6 million a year feel just as financially stressed as people earning $1.5 million because their expectations and expenses expanded alongside their income. Minimalists break this cycle by defining enough before they start earning. They decide in advance which home is sufficient, which car meets their needs, what level of material comfort constitutes genuine satisfaction. Then they earn toward that target rather than constantly moving the goalposts. This might mean deciding that a 7 million lira home is enough even if you could eventually afford 12 million. It might mean deciding that a 600,000 lira car is enough when colleagues drive 1.5 million lira vehicles. It might mean deciding your current wardrobe is enough even as your income could support constant upgrades. Defining enough creates a finish line, son. Without it, you're running an endless race where lifestyle expansion always outpaces income growth. With it, you reach a point where additional income flows entirely to saving and investing rather than consumption. The person who defined enough at one point 2 million lira of annual spending and then started earning 3 million builds wealth at an extraordinary rate. The 1.8 million lira gap between income and enough goes directly to financial freedom. Meanwhile, someone earning the same 3 million but constantly redefining enough upward might save almost nothing. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. The conventional view measures wealth by what you have, my friend. Houses, cars, possessions, visible markers of success. Minimalists measure wealth differently. They measure it by what you can choose. Can you leave a job that's destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off to handle a family emergency? Can you move to a new city for a relationship? Can you start a business without guaranteed income? Can you retire before 65? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but compromise your values? These options represent true wealth. They're only available to people who've built substantial margin between their income and expenses. The person earning 4 million a year but spending 3,900,000 has almost no optionality, my friend. They're chained to their income requirement. The person earning 1.5 million but spending 900,000 has extraordinary optionality. They can absorb disruptions, take risks, and make choices based on preference rather than financial necessity. Minimalists understand that optionality requires liquid resources more than physical possessions, son. The money tied up in a car you don't need can't buy your freedom when you need it. The home equity locked in excess house can't fund a career transition or an extended sabbatical. This perspective transforms spending decisions. Each purchase isn't just exchanging money for an object. You're trading optionality for possession. Is this item worth reducing your ability to make free choices about your life? Sometimes yes, usually no. Rule 10. Practice cyclical decluttering rather than annual purging. Most people who attempt minimalism do a massive purge, feel great for a few weeks, and then gradually accumulate back to their starting point, my friend. The purge feels productive. The gradual reaccumulation goes unnoticed. Within 2 years, they're right back where they started. Minimalists avoid this pattern through cyclical decluttering. Rather than annual massive purges, they perform small, regular reviews, a weekly glance at incoming items, a monthly evaluation of one category, a quarterly assessment of overall accumulation trends. This cyclical approach catches accumulation early before it rebuilds to overwhelming levels. Removing 3 items per week is manageable and sustainable. Removing 300 items once a year feels overwhelming and often gets postponed indefinitely. The cyclical approach also maintains awareness. When you evaluate your possessions regularly, you notice patterns, son. You see which categories tend to grow. You identify which emotional states trigger acquisition. You recognize which marketing tactics work on you specifically. This awareness enables prevention rather than just treatment. Let me give you a practical implementation of these rules that you can start today, my friend. This week, walk through your home with the replacement test in mind. Identify 10 items you would not replace if they disappeared. Sell, donate, or discard those items. Notice how it feels to remove things you don't actually want. This month, implement the 24-hour rule for all non-essential purchases. Track how many purchase desires survive the waiting period versus how many evaporate. The data will reveal how much of your spending is impulsive rather than intentional. This quarter, count your possessions in 3 categories that tend to accumulate for most people. Clothing, kitchen items, and media or entertainment are good starting points. Set a maximum threshold for each category based on what you actually use. This year, define what enough looks like across major spending categories. Which home is sufficient? Which transportation is adequate? Which wardrobe meets your genuine needs? Write these definitions down. Refer to them when the temptation arises to exceed your own standards. The financial transformation from these practices compounds over time. Someone who applies these rules consistently for 5 years accumulates substantially less while saving substantially more. The gap between their lifestyle and their income creates wealth that can't be built any other way. Here's what nobody tells you about minimalism and money, my friend. The relationship is bidirectional. Owning less creates more money, but having more money also makes owning less feel natural. When your savings account is strong and your investments are growing, the urge to accumulate fades. The psychological need that drives most consumption, the need for security and status, gets satisfied by financial strength rather than physical possessions. You no longer need the stuff to feel successful because your bank account already tells you the story you want to hear. People trapped in consumption cycles often can't explain why they buy so much. The truth is usually this: spending temporarily fills an emotional void that financial insecurity creates. Address the insecurity through actual financial strength, and the compulsion to spend often dissolves on its own. This creates a virtuous cycle, son. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more creates security. Security reduces the emotional drive to spend. Reduced spending accelerates saving further. Each turn of the cycle reinforces the next. The opposite cycle is equally powerful but destructive, my friend. Spending everything creates insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens insecurity. The cycle continues until some external shock forces a breaking point. The choice between these cycles determines financial trajectory far more than income ever could. High earners trapped in the destructive cycle build nothing. Modest earners riding the virtuous cycle build everything. The minimalist rules I've outlined aren't about suffering or deprivation. They're about recognizing that most consumption doesn't actually improve life satisfaction. Research consistently shows that beyond a baseline of security and comfort, additional purchases contribute minimally to well-being. Yet most people spend as if happiness scales linearly with spending. Minimalists align their behavior with this research, son. They spend enough to be comfortable and then redirect the excess toward freedom rather than accumulation. They end up with less stuff and more life. That apartment I described at the beginning, the one belonging to someone earning 1.1 million with 18 months of savings, belongs to someone applying these rules consistently, my friend. They didn't get there through exceptional income. They got there through exceptional clarity about what actually matters. The other apartment, the one belonging to someone earning 2 million a year but one step away from crisis, belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more stuff equals a better life. Both lifestyles are available to you regardless of what you currently earn. The choice is simply this: do you want to own your possessions, or are you comfortable with your possessions owning you? The math strongly favors the first option, my friend, and so does the peace of mind.